Do you guys have any questions to start? And if you guys don't have questions, I can demo something for you guys based on majority of the questions that I had this week.
Okay, I just want to ask a question quickly. I have a problem with creating an RDS. So I don't know if it is an update on AWS, but currently, if my RDS is creating, it's always coming as a cluster. And I was following up with your project. Terraform is rejecting the creation of RDS as a cluster.
It's probably something you are doing.
I've updated the security, the database subnet group. I've done that, different availability zone and subnet, reduce it to 1. It will reject if it is a single subnet, then I'm back deploying. So I followed your lecture. I've used some other ones, but mine is just keep on creating cluster. And the Terraform application is rejecting that for my deployment, following up with the project that you have there on the website.
Yeah, so it's something you are doing. Maybe after class, I can stay with you so we can look at it together.
Okay, sir. I really appreciate that.
No problem. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question, Aziz. I would like to share the screen. So is it a good time to do that, or it's just 5 minutes?
Sure, go ahead.
But I can do after 5 minutes. I'm just setting up few things. Is it okay after 5 minutes or 10 minutes? I can do that.
Okay. What's the question about? Is it about the project or is it
No,
about
it's not. It's a general question. So in my resume, I have attached logos of, when you do any AWS certification, they will give you a logo, right? Like certified logo. It will be in a hexagonal shape. So I have pasted those logos in my resume. But when I hosted this resume using S3 and CloudFront with custom domain, I'm not able to see those logos in a website. It's just showing us like HTML, those kind of stuff, but it's not showing the actual logos in that.
What type of website is it?
No, it's just a resume, Aziz.
Yeah, I mean, what type of website are you trying to deploy? Is it regular static?
Yeah, static website. Yeah, static website.
Okay. Basically, if it's a project that is not based on what is in the class, it may take more, it might be straightforward, it might take time. So that will be something that I'll have to look at after class, because I don't want to take most of the time.
Yeah, that's fine. That's okay. Yeah, it's not an urgent thing, That's okay. Yeah.
So we can look at it after the session is done.
Sure, no problem. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for this.
No problem. You guys have any question? How are you guys project? One thing I want to say is I pretty much have access to everyone's account. I can see how much time you guys are spending on each project. Right. While the projects are very straightforward and they take at least an hour or 2 at the most to do. Well, when you are starting out, it might take longer. I've always said this, I don't want you guys to just do the projects just to do them. Make sure you understand what you are doing. So on your end, even though you are following along with the project, on your end, you will also be documenting things you are learning along the way, questions you have, scrutinizing things we are doing, and asking yourself, why are we doing this way? That is how you will learn. This method is very similar to what you will see when you start working, because when you start working, no one is really going to sit there and teach you anything. You have to be able to get the information, look at it, and be able to formulate your own understanding of it. So, which is why I said a lot of the things you are doing here are things you would see at work. I like the self-paced route, like studying AWS the way you guys are studying it, trying to learn AWS the way you guys are doing. I like this method better because it is very identical to what you will see at work. If they assign something to you that you don't know, it is up to you to get all the information you need. So that is why you should also start practicing that now. And I say that to say that some of the projects should be taking you longer to do. So you guys shouldn't be rushing to get the projects done. I can tell you guys, for example, the CI/CD projects that I just released, it took me over a month to do that project. Not that because I couldn't finish it in 2 weeks or so, but because I wanted to understand every aspect of the project, which is the same thing you should be doing. If you are presenting your project during your interview, you should be able to explain every aspect of the project. And if you can do that, that is a sign that you are learning. And also, don't jump between the projects. Those projects are aligned in your account for a reason. They are meant to start you from like some of the basic topics, and we are building from there. So try not to jump back and forth between the projects because you feel, I already know this, I understand that. Even if you feel that you know it, then it should be easy for you to complete. Just do it and complete it. And what I found is that a lot of people skip the projects. And when you skip the projects, like for example, if you haven't done all the other projects, don't jump to CI/CD. Don't do the CI/CD project because the CI/CD project is a combination of all the other projects. So you have to complete all the other projects and understand what you are doing there for the CI/CD project to make sense. Elise, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if there's a way you can maybe demo how we could, like, let's say we want to showcase a project during an interview, like if there's like a way that we need to follow, because obviously we can't go through all the steps one by one, right? So if there's like a way that we could follow that's gonna be faster within the time frame to showcase the project
Okay.
to demo, yeah.
Okay. Yes, I can do that. I'll demo how you guys can present to your project during your interview. So the project that I would recommend that you guys demo is either one of your Terraform projects or your CI/CD project. Not probably. The best one is the CI/CD project because it pretty much has, the CI/CD project is a combination of all the projects you've done so far. Is all those projects wrapped up in one. It covers Terraform, it covers Docker, it covers data migration, it covers AWS, it covers CI/CD pipeline. You guys remember this diagram that I've been sharing with you guys? The CI/CD project covers a lot of the skills you need to learn as a cloud engineer. It covers Linux, Git, AWS, Terraform, Docker, and CI/CD. So of all the skills that are here, it covers 6 of them. The only one that is not included is Python, which makes sense. Python is not part of the CI/CD project. So that is the project I would suggest you work yourself up to. Work your way up to the CI/CD project. Make sure you get all the foundational knowledge. Once you understand all the knowledge from the other projects, you can apply that knowledge to the CI/CD project. I've been through the same position you guys are in. The same positions you guys are in now, I've been through the same position where I started from not knowing anything. And even now, when I work on these projects, they take me time to do. At least 2 weeks, 3 weeks, sometimes a month, because I am taking my time to go through it and understand what I'm doing. So when you guys are going through the projects, I want you guys to also take your time. If you and I have a meeting about any of the projects, you should be able to explain every aspect of the project to me, right? So let me demo how you can present the CI/CD project once you have completed that project during your interview. I'm going to.
I hope the session is recorded.
Am I recording?
Yeah, it's being recorded, yeah.
Yes, I am. Yeah. Okay. Let me, why is this thing open? I'm just going to close folder.
Quick question while you're doing that. Can we still download Terraform for some of the projects that one or two projects that we had already done? Because I personally, I did not purchase like the whole membership at first. I purchased only one course. And I didn't know until after I completed the project that, that if I didn't delete anything, I was going to be charged by AWS. And so I delete every time. I took screenshots, so I can go back and explain what I've done step by step. But the project itself, I wanted to be able to share in the portfolio. And then I think at the end of the project, somebody spoke about it in one of your comments and he was like, oh, you can go and share on Terraform. So is it possible that I can still go and just go to Terraform and just get ahead and just download it? Because I already have a GitHub account. And I just don't have a Terraform account, so I just want to know if I can do that so that as I'm working through the project, even though I know you said the best thing, I just like to be able to put it inside my GitHub with other projects I already have in there already.
Yes. So right now at the early stage of the projects, So the knowledge of how you learn AWS is broken down into 3 categories. In the first category, you'll start by learning AWS by doing the certification exams, right? Doing the AWS Cloud Practitioner course and the Solutions Architect course. Those are meant to teach you about AWS, the services they offer, the cloud, and what those services that AWS offer are used for. So that is the first time you started learning AWS. Then once you have finished those courses, in the second part, right, that is where you start building projects in the management console based on what you learned in those courses. So in the management console phase, we will just be deploying our application in the management console. This phase is good for you to get your hands dirty and understand, okay, what is this services that I just learned about in this Cloud Practitioner and Solutions Architect course, and how can I build them myself using the management console? This also helps you get familiar with this service, the settings that you have to pick when you are deploying, pretty much creating resources using those services. That is the phase you are in now. So early on in your project phase, you will notice that all of the projects we are working on, those projects are being deployed in the management console. When you deploy a project in the management console, yes, because AWS resources, they charge you for it. AWS is pretty much pay as you go. So we can't leave those resources running because we don't want you to pay a lot of money. Lord knows when your interview is going to come, right? Or when you'll be ready for interview. So at this phase, just focus on doing those projects in the management console and deleting those resources once you are done. Certainly, I like what you've done where you've taken screenshots of certain things. At this phase of those projects, one thing you can do is you can use your screenshots to write a post or article about your project experience, what you did, what you learned, and so on. That is the same thing Edgar is doing. Is documenting his project at this stage and is pretty much using his screenshots to write posts. Then once you have finished that those projects in the management console, in the third phase is where we will be using Terraform. So basically, the same projects you did in the management console, we are going to be redoing those projects using Terraform. At that point, yes, you will now have your Terraform code in your own GitHub repository. You would have Terraform installed on your computer, and all the necessary codes that you would need to add to your resume and you will need to be able to present your projects during your interview would all be stored in your own personal GitHub repository. So I said all that to say that your learning journey is in phase. So the phase that you are in now is in the management console phase. So everything you do in this phase, just follow along. If you want to take screenshots to write posts, do that and delete everything. But when you get to the Terraform phase, you would have all your codes in your own GitHub repository that you will be able to present.
Okay, so let me ask you something. So, because after I had purchased deployed a WordPress website on AWS, I did that, right? I know you can see my account, but I completed that project, right? But then I was like, okay, I need to be able to look at everything because I didn't know that you have to share on a different phase so that you don't get charged from AWS. So when I purchased the monthly membership, which is fine because I'm like the fact that I'm able to interact with you, on Zoom and stuff like that for these projects. So I'm right now, if you go back to my account, you see that I'm at Get Started. And so I got everything set up and I went and I signed up with Udemy. I already had actually a Udemy account. I just signed up for the class. I'm in the practitioner course, and I'm probably about like section 5 that I do. So I spent like a couple of hours a day out my time to do the course. So I just finished the multi-factor, the MFA course, right? Now, do I just continue to finish out the whole course before I go right back to the next project you got going on, which is deploy a static website on AWS? Or do I follow, like, what do I do as far, because I'm at Get It Started right now. When I click on Get It Started, you have the, what is it here?
Yes.
The next one I completed is that when I have to complete next on your end, it says create an IM user group and assign policies. I already actually did that when I started watching the practitioner course on Udemy with the guy you recommend, because he has hands-on projects on that one as well.
Okay.
So I went and I started, which to be honest, like I've been an admin for Microsoft for a couple of projects I did for them a couple of years. So I know this is pretty much like admin, like, on the Microsoft side where you have users and you put roles and stuff. So I kind of understand it. Like it's not something that I have a hard time understanding. It's just learning the new system and knowing how to navigate through the system. That's why I took this course. So I did that already, and I got my users, I got my assigned policies on that one. I set up multi-factor already I only got one user actually, IM user right now, but I have my root user that I did the multi-factor on that one through your course. So I had that set up, but then when I went into his course, I set up my IM user, and then I did my multi-factor. So do I continue to keep following along on yours in his as well? I think that's what my question is, really.
Yeah, so at that phase, the getting started is showing you everything you must complete before you start the deploying a static website, right? So if you notice at the top of that list is his course. So yes, finish his course first. And even if he's doing little demos here, showing you how to create IAM users or whatever demo is, if you want to follow along with him, feel free to follow along. In our project, I pretty much walk you guys through every single aspect of the project that you need to create to be able to complete the project from beginning to end. So finish his course first and continue with the solutions architect course and finish those courses. Once you finish those courses and you feel you have a good knowledge of AWS, the cloud, the services they offer, and you feel like you need to start tackling some hands-on projects to bring those knowledge in, then start doing the project. But yes, finish those courses first before you start the project.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. For those that are just joining, Elise asked me to demo how you would present your project during your interview. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. This is the CI/CD project. At the end of your program, when you get this CI/CD project, you would have the entire code. And just like we were doing with the Terraform project, the code will be stored in your personal GitHub repository and also cloned on your computer. So this is the same code that is stored in my GitHub repository that I have cloned on my computer, right? In this project, if I was to walk a potential employer through this project, I'll just let them know that I recently completed a CI/CD project deploying a dynamic application in the cloud. And I will let them know some of the things that I did in this project. So in this project, it might take a long time to explain everything, but you guys already are working through the projects. Like I said, this project is based on multiple knowledge. It is not just CI/CD. Terraform is in it, Docker is in it, data migration is in it. So everything is in it. But when you are walking them through the project, you can give them an idea what the project, once you have run your pipeline, what the pipeline would do. So here, I would explain that once I build my pipeline is going to configure my AWS credentials to allow GitHub Actions to create resources in my AWS account. Once the job is done, the next job is going to install Terraform on the runner and use that runner to run Terraform apply. This is going to apply my Terraform code and build all the infrastructure that I've specified within my Terraform configuration file and build those resources in AWS. Once this job is done, the next job is going to use the AWS CLI to create a self-hosted runner. And you don't have to go into like specifying the details of what a self-hosted runner is. You just, because you want to make sure you are very clear and concise. So just explain your pipeline. If they have any questions, they will ask you. So here, the pipeline is going to use AWS CLI to create a self-hosted runner. And Once that is done, parallel to this job, another job will create my ECR repository to store my Docker image. Once these two jobs are completed, we are going to build our Docker image for the application. And once the Docker image is built, in the next job, we are going to build our Docker image with this job, and we're also going to push our Docker image to the Amazon ECR repository we created in the previous job. Once that is done, the next job is going to export all the environment variables we used to build the Docker image into S3 so that our Fargate containers can access the environment variables from there. Parallel to this job, another job is going to run. That job would install Flyway, and it would use Flyway to migrate the SQL script for our application into the RDS database. Once those two jobs are done, the next job is going to stop our self-hosted runner, and the last two jobs is going to create a new tax definition revision. And finally, we are going to start the ECS service. So this is how you would just pretty much just explain the pipeline, just what the pipeline would do. So don't worry about going too much into details, because your interview might be 30 minutes, might be an hour. So you want to make sure that at tops, you can present your project in 20 minutes. And if they have any questions, let them ask you. So I would explain this part of this project, what the pipeline would do. And here in my local repository, I would also explain that in the IAC directory, this is where we have stored all of our Terraform codes for all the resources we are going to create. So here, just to mention some of the resources we will create is VPC with public and private subnets, and we will set up all the necessary routing. Then we are going to create S3 buckets, security groups, ECS service, NAT gateways, and so on. So basically, all of our Terraform configuration will be stored in the IAC directory. Also, in our root directory, we have the Docker file that our GitHub action will use to build the Docker image on this job. On this job where we are building the Docker image, the GitHub actions job will use this Docker file to build the Docker image. And here in the SQL directory, we have added the script that our GitHub actions job will use Flyway to migrate into the RDS database. To apply this pipeline, you are going to click on the .github directory. In that directory, you are going to have your pipeline reference file. In this directory, you are going to have your pipeline, what they call it, workflow file. This is your workflow file. So to apply your pipeline, select this file to open it. Once you open this file, we have created an environment variable on line 11. And this environment variable allows us to specify whether we want to run Terraform apply or run Terraform destroy. Before I run the pipeline, I'm going to go to my GitHub repository. So while I'm trying to log in, if anyone has any question, you can ask me.
Please, excuse me, I got one question for you. When you are running your CI/CD pipeline, so it coming with microservices or is like a monoservice?
So in our CI/CD pipeline, it is just coming with microservices, but it is coming with pretty much whatever we need to build our job. So I'm not sure if you can necessarily call it microservice but none of our pipeline is not just one. It is broken down into different sections where each job is doing something different. Okay. So that is based on like what I explained here. Each job in our pipeline is doing something different, is using a different service, whatever service it needs to build whatever we are trying to build.
Okay, so that means a lot of engineers can work on this project. So that means it's like microservices. So one engineer can work like to build like AWS infra, and another one can build Docker, another one can build
a different. Yeah. Certainly. So let's say there are multiple people at your company that are working on this project. Each person can create the workflow file that is required by GitHub Actions to build the job. So someone can work on the workflow file that will build your Docker image and push it to ECR. Someone else can work on the workflow file that will apply your Terraform code. The workflow file are very small and easy to build. So it just depends on how you guys want to split up the tasks. It is a task that can be broken down into multiple sections and different people can work on it.
When this pipeline broke down, how they can connect together, or when, like, if I finish my job, I have to push it to GitHub.
Yes. Yes. So if you guys will be working out of the same repository. Once you've completed your job, push your update into your GitHub repository, and other engineers will also push their updates. So usually that is how you guys will collaborate.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
No problem. So I'm in the repository for my GitHub Actions project. So basically, to present this project, and before I present it, this is the URL of the application I am trying to deploy. As you can see, the URL doesn't work because my application is not deployed. This is why I said this is the best project you guys can present, because it has a combination of all the projects you guys are doing. Which one of the questions I always get is, how can I present my project and I don't want to leave the resources that I've created running? Well, as you guys can see, I don't have any resources running. By the time I apply this pipeline, it is going to create pretty much the same reference architecture you guys have been creating for those that have completed the dynamic project. Here, it is going to create my VPC with public and private subnets. It is going to create 2 NAT gateways in the VPC. It is going to create an application load balancer, internet gateway, security groups, Route 53, my ECS Fargate service in auto-scaling groups, RDS instance, and EC2 that we are using as a self-hosted runner. It is going to create an ECR repository, ECS cluster, tax definition, ECS service, IAM role. It is going to request an AWS certificate from Certificate Manager, and it is going to create an S3 bucket. So, which is a combination of all the projects you guys have done. So now, to create this pipeline, all you have to do once you have completed this project is here. You are going to change the destroy to apply. This environment variable Terraform action is what we have added to our project to dynamically specify whether we want to run Terraform apply or run Terraform destroy. For example, if I come here to this job, this is the job that will run Terraform to build our AWS infrastructure. So here, if you guys notice, when you guys run Terraform on your computer, right, the command you run is Terraform and something. You run Terraform apply, Terraform destroy, Terraform init. There is no difference from what we are doing here. If you look here, the name of this environment variable is Terraform action, which is the same exact name as you see here. You see that when I highlight it, you can see the same name. So here we are saying Terraform action equals apply. So what that means is when we run our pipeline, it is going to run Terraform and populate whatever value we put for the Terraform action on line 8. Since Terraform action that we have on line 8 currently is apply. So here it is going to run Terraform apply. And the auto approve is just another flag you can use if you don't want to type yes, because you guys know anytime you run Terraform apply, it would ask you, do you really want to deploy your infrastructure? And you would type yes to accept. So when you are running your pipeline, you are not going to be there to type yes. That is why we are using this auto approve, meaning that when we type Terraform apply, we are going to automatically accept that we want to apply the changes. Now that I've changed my Terraform action to apply, I'm going to save my code. Once you guys are done 100% with this project, this is all you have to do moving forward. You save your code. Once you save it, then the next thing you are going to do is push your update into your GitHub repository. Here, I'm going to type a commit message. So your commit message can be anything. For my commit message, I'm going to type, for a commit message that doesn't mean anything, I don't know why I always struggle with what to type. So here, I'm just going to type creating AWS infrastructure. Once you type your commit message, click commit. And once you commit your changes, we are going to click sync changes to push our update into our GitHub repository. Once you push your update into your GitHub repository, it will trigger your pipeline. And here, all you have to do is come back into your GitHub repository. Then select actions here. You can see that it has triggered the pipeline. This is the latest commit I pushed. I called it creating AWS infrastructure. If you select that commit, you can see that the pipeline is running. If you notice the names of the jobs here, it is equivalent to all the jobs we have here. It has run the job to configure my AWS credentials. Now it is running the job to build the AWS infrastructure. If you see here, it is building the AWS infrastructure. When you select it, and here I'm going to scroll down, it is running Terraform apply now. And you guys will see that the output you are seeing on the screen is the same output you guys see when you run Terraform apply on your computer. So one thing I want you guys to keep in mind is CI/CD pipeline is really nothing more than a combination of all the things you've been doing. But right now you are trying to remove yourself from that process and have the applications or the project you've completed fully automated. So that's really what CI/CD is doing. So you are removing yourself from the process, and now we are using GitHub Runner. A GitHub Runner is nothing more than another Linux machine that GitHub is managing that you are using to build the job. So basically with CI/CD pipeline, the most place you are going to do the work is when you write your configuration for your CI/CD pipeline. Once you've created your code for your CI/CD pipeline, the runners that GitHub Actions is managing, which is another Linux server that is located somewhere that they are managing, will take your place and they will just run the jobs for you. So which is why I said you have to finish the other projects to really understand what's going on here, because there's nothing different we are doing here from all the other things you are doing now. The only difference is we are running Terraform apply here on a runner. In your Terraform project, you are currently running Terraform apply there. So this is going to take a while to build because we have a lot of stuff to build in our AWS infrastructure, especially the RDS instance takes about 7 minutes. So we'll just let this run. And once this is done running, we should be able to access our application without having to configure anything. You guys will see that once all I did is I changed my Terraform action to apply. And by the time this pipeline is done running, if I come back to this page and hit refresh, my application should be up. Go ahead, Elise.
Okay, so my question is, when you working for the organization, right? Is everything, the configuration, is it in the repos, the repo or whatever, and you just copy and paste it into Terraform?
No, you would have to build it yourself based on what you guys are building. So here, the only thing we built in this CI/CD project is we wrote our configuration, which the job to configure AWS credentials, this is all we had to write to complete that job. The job that is currently running to apply our Terraform code in AWS, this is all we had to write, right? So, and even all these ones, they are very simple. Really, the job ends when we run Terraform apply, right? But the only extra thing we are doing here is we are exporting some of our values from our Terraform project so that we can use those values in our CI/CD pipeline. That is what all these other ones you guys are seeing here. If you look here, you'll notice that they all look the same. So really, all the lines of code you need to write, well, they are not code, because I noticed that when we say code, you guys get scared. They are not code. They are like scripts. These things, you can find examples of them online. All you have to do is just look in the documentation, see how the documentation is telling you how to do it, copy what they have into your code, and modify one or two things. So let me go to the next job. This is the next job. You can see all the line of script we have to write is nothing more than this. So I really don't want you guys to be intimidated by the scripts when you see it, which is why I said how you will be able to tackle a project like this is making sure that you have got all the little pieces of the knowledge along the way. When you've done all the other projects and you understand those projects, everything you are doing here makes so much sense to you, and there is nothing about this that is intimidating. This will only be intimidating to you if you skip all the projects and you try to jump straight to this.
So I just had a question. So do you just so when you see how you deploying the you're applying the Terraform action, do you do that around the time like when you if you're in the interview, should you already have it start up already, or if you just going just show them that you know what you're doing and go into the action? So you do what you just did just now when you went into the code, you applied it, and then now we're just waiting for everything to deploy. Is this exactly how you would present it when you're doing an interview? And you're maybe most likely if you're doing a remote, you would do it on the screen share.
Yes.
Okay.
So when you're sharing your screen, this is actually a project that I would recommend that you present while you are doing the interview. So don't, even though you can apply it prior to your interview and your application will be up, but because this project will showcase your skill sets in many ways, it is better to present this project in real time. So while your pipeline is deploying, you can use that time to answer any questions they may have about the project.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
No problem.
I think Kofi has been raising his hand.
Kofi, sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, no problem. Hi, Aziz. I have a question regarding the CI/CD pipeline project. Like I got back to it yesterday, and when I tried to run it, I got an error message saying that Terraform exited with code 1. Like it point out the Terraform apply -auto approve. That is some mistake there. I don't know if it's a mistake or.
Okay. Usually when I do the project, I also go back and take the project as if I'm a student. So if it is telling you that your code is failing, Terraform auto approve, then you need to review the job where the code is failing. So for all the jobs we have in the pipeline, they will be here. Whatever job is currently running is where you will see this yellow thing cycling here. If that is the job that fails, for those jobs, you can click on the job and you can see the output for the steps you have in the job. So based on what you are telling me, it is saying your code is failing on this job.
Yes.
It's failing on this step to run Terraform approve. So you have to go in there and look at the error and see why your code is failing there. But I can help you look at it after class, but this is how you can troubleshoot some of the issues you are having. And even if we look at this output on this step, you can see that it is doing nothing more but running our Terraform code. These are the same outputs you guys see when you run Terraform apply on your computer. So right now it is running the job to build the Docker image and pushing the Docker image to the Amazon ECR repository. So yes, while you are presenting this project, you can use this time as an opportunity to answer any questions they have. Sorry, I'm reading the comment section. Do you guys have any question?
None so far, Aziz. Thank you.
Yes, so someone asked, will you be responsible for writing the entire code, or would a section of the code be assigned to you? It depends on the team you are working on. Really, we work in 2-week sprints, and majority of the teams that I've been on, usually you will be responsible for writing sections of the code. So basically, if you guys have to write the entire configuration for this CI/CD pipeline, all this is not going to be assigned to you in one sprint. So for this sprint, they might just only assign to you to write the code to apply the Terraform, your Terraform project in your AWS account. Then once that is done, then in the next sprint, the next task that might be assigned to you is to write the configuration to create the ECR repository. So not all of it is never going to be assigned to you at once. And even if it's assigned to you at once, you can break them down into multiple sprints. You just have to tackle them one task before the next one. So like I said, by the time you guys walk through all the projects you are working through now, and when you get here, it will make a lot of sense to you. And you will notice that, okay, I'm not doing anything different here than what I've done when I completed the projects in the management console and when I completed the project using Terraform.
Another question I have is, so is pretty much the container everything within this script that you wrote as well, like it's all compiled together, and your art, your documentation and everything, is that within this pipeline as well?
All this pipeline is doing is, it is
All of that. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. So all this pipeline is doing is, it is telling GitHub Actions what to do. So in this case, part of what we need to do for this application to run is we need to build our Docker image. So here we have written a configuration to build our Docker image, which is here. Let me show you, which is here. We have written the configuration to build the Docker image. So when GitHub Actions is running the pipeline, it will just use the Docker file we have specified to build the Docker image and push the image to our Amazon ECR repository. In AWS, when we create the Fargate service, the Fargate service will use that image to run our containers. So at this point, because you haven't started those projects, I'm not sure if you've completed them, it won't really make sense. So that's why I'm saying you have to complete those projects in the management console, understand what you are doing there. Then in this project, we are not doing anything other than what you've already done before.
Aziz?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Right.
How much is, if I'm about to do the Terraform project, how much usually if I do it, it takes me several days to complete it. If I leave it running, how do you have an idea how much it costs per hour?
So when you are doing your Terraform project, you don't have to leave anything running anymore. When you write your Terraform code, and for example, let's say you wrote the Terraform code for your VPC. Once you have tested and your code is working, once you are done, let's say you run Terraform apply and you created your VPC. Once you are done, run Terraform destroy to destroy everything. Then go to the next lecture and write the next code, whether it is NAT gateway. Once you've written that code, the next time you go and run Terraform apply, it will just create your VPC and whatever additional code for whatever resources you have added. So let's say since you create your VPC, you add another code for NAT gateway, it will create your VPC and your NAT gateway. Once you've tested, run Terraform destroy to destroy everything.
Okay.
And the next time you come back, you just keep following that process. So that is the beauty of Terraform. You don't have to leave anything running.
Okay, so I can go back to where I left off.
Exactly.
For example, I have work. I need a break. Okay.
Yes. Sorry.
Okay,
Go ahead.
thank you.
Yeah. So whenever you run Terraform apply, you will just be picking up from wherever you left off, and that will be based on whatever resources you have added to your Terraform configuration file.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
I need to go, Aziz. I have to go back to work. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Aziz. I'll watch the YouTube.
Okay, you're welcome. Have a nice day. My pipeline is running the last job, and the last job here is restarting the ECS service. That usually takes time because here we have specified that we want the service to be stable before we can access it. So here, the pipeline will just make sure that when we restart the ECS service, that everything is deployed properly and the service is working. And once it has verified that the service is working, this job is going to be completed and we will be able to access our application. So it is just another line that we have added just to verify that everything we have done when we deploy our Fargate containers, that the services we have deployed in ECS is working properly. Do you guys have any questions? How confident are you guys feeling? Are you guys encouraged, discouraged? How is that going?
I was a little bit discouraged, but the thing is, I just felt overwhelmed. That's the thing. It's not maybe I want to quit or anything, but I just feel overwhelmed as far as like I don't just want to copy and paste what you're doing. I want to understand what it is that I'm doing. I want to be able to, you know, not have to follow. But then, I mean, I'm just getting started, so I can't really
Exactly.
blame myself.
Yeah.
I kind of have to give myself that, you know, hey, you're doing good. Just keep doing what you're doing. But I just feel like, okay, maybe I'm not understanding. I'm okay. I think I'm okay now.
Yeah. So when you guys are starting out, you will have a mixture of all those feelings. I always get it too, right? You are doing fine, you know, as long as you are making an attempt to learn and to do it every day, you will be fine. You will keep learning, and there will be new things you will learn that would be added to the previous things you learn. And all those little things you are learning is what turns to one big knowledge of things you know. So when you guys are working on the projects, that's why I said, take your time to work on the project. So if I was you guys, and I'm working on this project, I would spend for each of the jobs that are in this pipeline, I would not move on to the next job until I make sure that I understand every piece, every line of that job and what that job is doing. So for this job, for example, this is all you just have to figure out. You just have to figure out like, okay, I have about 10 lines of code. What are this line of code doing? And that is how you have to tackle it. But if you copied my code and paste it here, and you followed along, and maybe you understand, right? And you ran it and your job was successful, and you just move on to the next. That is not really the proper way of learning, because even in AWS, there is always codes that you will be copying from the documentation and pasting into yours. Where your knowledge will always come from is understanding what you are using. So, which is why I said you guys have to take your time to understand each one. I promise you guys, it is not hard to learn. I didn't have a computer science degree. I used to be one of those people that I said I'm not a computer person. I started learning AWS in my 30s. I wasn't 20 something in my 30s. And before then, I haven't done anything IT related. But I guarantee you guys, if you take your time to go through it, it would make sense. Like, you will learn. There's nothing hard about what we are doing. You will learn, but you just gotta take your time and do the work. Samantha, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, Mr. Aziz.
Hi.
And hello, team. So this is my first time in this meeting, and so I'm kind of lost. Though I'm taking a course on AWS, but I haven't gotten to this level yet. But I've been hearing about CI/CD pipeline and all of that, but I really don't know what to think about. So I'm kind of lost. And so my question is, for this Zoom meetings every Saturday, would I always get access to them, like the recordings?
Would you always get access to this Zoom meeting every Saturday?
Like the recordings of this Zoom meeting?
Oh, yeah. So the recordings, I actually post them on my YouTube channel, and anytime I post it, I will send it in the Slack channel that the video is up. So yes, you'll be able to get all the recordings that you can watch. This Saturday session is just for anyone to ask any questions they have while they are taking the project. So everyone is going at a different pace, and everyone is at a different point in the project. So if you have any question, it doesn't matter whether it's the beginning or the CI/CD, feel free to ask any questions you have. It just happens that today we are doing the demo on how to present the CI/CD project, but certainly at the end of your learning journey of what you will learn. So at this point, don't even worry about it. Just continue to go through what you are going through in your account. And when you get here, everything will make sense.
Okay, thank you. So about the GitHub repository, is it like an account I have to open or what?
Yes, it is an account you have to open. When you get to the project where it is required to open a GitHub account, I have walked you through the steps on how to open one. So right now, follow the projects that are in your account. If you don't see anything about opening a GitHub account, don't worry about it at this point. When you get there, you will see it.
All right. Thank you.
No problem. Shall I go ahead?
Oh, hi, Aziz. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Good
Oh, hi
afternoon.
everyone. Yeah, thank you for the wonderful job you've been doing. I've been going through the classes, the tutorials, and they're great. I see that you've done a lot of hard work to get it to that stage. I don't have any question on the CI/CD because I haven't reached there, so I'm not going to jump the gun. But yeah, so I'm working on how you created Terraform models to, and I just wonder, how did you come about creating the template? At the beginning of every lesson, like when we were building the RDS or VPC, we always get a template to copy, then paste, then you show us how to fill in the values for the parameters. When I look at the Terraform documentation, I saw that there's so many parameters that you could list. So how did you come about? I just want to know how you went about it. So if I want to start my own from the beginning, how do I do it? Because you made it easy for us, yes, and I appreciate that. But I just want to know how you went about reducing those parameters to just those ones you used.
Exactly.
So that if I want to build something you've never built before, it's going to be easy for me.
Okay. Yes, exactly. Thank you. And that was actually what I wrote down to demo for you guys today. But then we got sidetracked with this. So let me finish this. Then I would demo it right next to this. So I'll show you real quick how I come about getting the resource type and the arguments that I used for the Terraform project.
All right, that would be great. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so by now my pipeline should be done. Here, the pipeline is done. If you see all these green check marks, it means that everything ran successfully. Now, if I come back to the URL for my application and I'm just going to hit refresh here, my application is up and running. So here, I'm just going to test it. You can see everything is working as intended. So this is how you can present this application during your interview, right? It is a combination of everything you've done from the beginning of the program all the way to the end, which is why I said, if you haven't gone through all the projects we've done in the beginning, don't do the CI/CD. It is not going to make any sense to you. But I guarantee you that the CI/CD is just a combination of all the things we've done. We are not doing anything new. If you guys notice, this is the same application you deployed using Terraform, right? But now we are just introducing another layer of automation where we can fully deploy this application without having to run the Terraform apply from our computer or setting up all the little things we've set up on our computer. Here, the GitHub Actions job is pretty much doing everything for us based on what we have written in our configuration file. This file, they call it workflow files. It's a workflow file. If you see here, it says workflow. So this is how I will present this project. This project covers a lot of skills of things you have to learn to be a cloud engineer. This project covers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those things. It covers Linux, Git, GitHub, AWS, Terraform, Docker, and CI/CD. Once you finish this project and you understand it, you should be very proud of yourself. I will even say at that point, start applying. At that point, you have enough knowledge to work as a cloud engineer. You'll be learning the rest as you go.
Yeah, I think there's people waiting to join the meeting. Can you let them in?
Yeah, sure. I've pretty much let everyone in that is showing up in the waiting room. Once you are done presenting the project, and if you want to destroy everything, which this will clean up all the resources you have created so you don't get charged, all you have to do here is change the Terraform action to destroy. So here I'm going to type destroy. Once you change the Terraform action to destroy, save your file. I'm going to click file and click save. Then once you've saved it, push your update into your GitHub repository. Here, I'm going to type destroy AWS infrastructure. And remember what we said here for Terraform action, since we have destroy here, that means that when we run this job, on this step where it is running our Terraform command, whatever the value of Terraform action is, it will put that here. So now that our Terraform action value is destroy, this means that on this step, it is going to run Terraform destroy. And that is all that is going on here. Then once you type your commit message, click commit. And once you commit your changes, click sync changes to push it to your GitHub repository. Now, if we go to our GitHub account and select actions again, you can see the latest commit is destroy AWS infrastructure. Select it. It is now building the pipeline. It has run the job to configure the AWS credentials. Now it is running the job to destroy our AWS infrastructure that we created with Terraform. If you guys notice here, it is running the Terraform command now. And you can see here, if I can slow down here just to show you here, you can see here it ran Terraform destroy. And now it is destroying all the resources we created. So you can see here, it is showing the plan, just like you guys will see when you run this on your computer. After it shows the plan, because we add auto approve to the command, it would immediately go into destroying all the resources we have created. There's nothing new here. Once you go through all the other projects, this will make a lot of sense. While this is running, because it is deleting the resources I've created here, if I refresh here, you can see the application is down because we are deleting everything we created. So this is a good project you can have in your GitHub account. This is a perfect project to have that it is a project you can use to deploy a different application following the same process. And you can have multiple applications within your GitHub account that you've created a pipeline for. And if you want to deploy any of those applications, it's just a matter of coming into your configuration file and changing your Terraform actions to whether apply or destroy. Shola asked, how do I come up with the Terraform codes that I share with you guys? Remember what I was saying in the beginning of the class, that your AWS journey is broken down into 3 sections that I would say. The first section is broken down into 3 phases. The first phase will be doing the cloud practitioner exams, the course, and learning what AWS is, the services they offer, and what those services are used for. In the second phase, this is where you learn how to create those things you learned in the cloud practitioner course in the management console. So the second phase is strictly management console. Anything you learn while taking the course, you are going to use that knowledge to build those services using just the management console. When you build those services in the management console, it helps you to understand them. It helps you to see the settings for those services. And that is pretty much what the management console is used for. The limitation of the management console is, yes, since AWS is pay as you go, you don't want to get charged for the resources you have created. So we have to delete everything. The third phase is now building the same resources you created in the management console using Terraform. So if I want to create a project using Terraform, this is how I come up with the code. We almost had time, but we will do like a VPC and we'll do as much as we can do. Here, let me try to open one of my notes. Okay. This is my notes on how to create a VPC. And believe it or not, till today, I still follow my notes. So for some of the services you create, it is good to take notes for them, like of the steps you will use to create those resources. To create VPC, these are my notes that I typically follow. So let me put that note here. So if I was to create a VPC in the management console, let me see if I can do something. I'm going to create just a file here, but I'll delete it later. So let's say I want to create a VPC from scratch. This is my Terraform code. This is my Visual Studio editor, right? I'm trying to find the best way to. Okay, let's start with this. So I need to create a VPC. According to my notes, first, I need to specify my region. That is just something about picking my region here. And in your code, if you want to If you want to add a variable to specify your region, you can add a variable. But I'm not going to cover variable here. I'm just going to strictly show you guys how I get my codes. So the next thing I need to do is create a VPC. To create a VPC, remember in the second phase of your learning, I said you have to know how to create a VPC in the management console before you even start creating a VPC with Terraform. So here, the only thing I don't like about, I want to be able to see my screen like this. So to create a VPC in the management console, you'll come here, right? You type VPC. And this same concept we are using here, you can use it for any service in AWS. To create a VPC, here I'm going to click Create VPC. Then once I click Create VPC, here I'm going to click VPC only. Here it is asking for the name of my VPC. I'm going to call it test. The next option is IPv4 CIDR block. I'm going to select this option. Then here it is asking for my CIDR block. I'm going to enter 10.0.0.0/24. Then here it has IPv6. We don't want any IPv6. For tenancy, it is default, because you always want to make sure your tenancy is default, because the other option costs a lot of money. So always leave it on default. These are the options that I have chosen to create my VPC. Now to create my VPC with Terraform, here, I'm going to come to the web browser, Google, and I'm going to type AWS Terraform create VPC. One thing I like about the Terraform documentation is very search friendly. Whatever you typed in is usually the first result you will get. So all you have to do is just type a description of what you are trying to do. I typed AWS Terraform, then what I'm trying to create. So here you can see AWS_VPC. That is the resource type to create a VPC. I'm going to select it. If you guys notice in your Terraform project, when I create the resources, I always specify them by their name. So that way you just understand what is going on. Here, one thing I always want you guys to understand with Terraform is, with Terraform, there is always resource. Resource means that you are trying to create a resource in AWS, whether it's VPC, EC2. Then here is the resource type. The resource type is how Terraform knows what you are trying to create. For every services that AWS has or any cloud provider you are trying to use Terraform to create, those services will have their own unique resource type. So here, this is how Terraform knows that you are trying to create a VPC. So if you are trying to create 20 VPCs, they will all be AWS_VPC. This is how Terraform knows that you are trying to create a VPC. Then here, this is called reference name. The reference name is when you are creating this resource block within your Terraform code, you can name this resource block anything you want. Remember, we said this resource type is provided by Terraform. It doesn't change, but the reference name is the name you are giving to this configuration. You can call it anything you want. So here, since you are telling Terraform you want to create a VPC, you can name that VPC. And another thing I don't want you to get confused is the name you put here is not the name you are giving the VPC in your console. It is just the name you are using to name this resource block within your Terraform code. So here, once I type AWS VPC, right, all you have to do is just come to the Terraform documentation. I always start with the basic usage with tags. So here it is telling you this resource block will create a VPC with tags. I always start with this, so I'm just going to copy this and paste this into my code. Can you guys see the screen better? Because I'm trying to show you guys everything side by side.
Yes.
Okay. So once I copy the code here, right, then let's come back to before we go to the management console. So I've told you that this is the resource type. This is the reference name. The next thing you need to understand is arguments. These things you see here, they are arguments. And these arguments are just the different settings you want to enable in the VPC when you create it. And how you will pick this argument is in the Terraform documentation. For any resource you are trying to create, it always has an argument section. So if you click on this argument here, it will bring you to all the arguments that are available for that resource. And all an argument is I will show you in a second, but all an argument is it is just the setting you want to enable in the VPC. If you don't understand an argument, you can read the definition here. So typically I just always read the definition. But if you want to be sure about your argument, let's do it this way. In the management console, I told you guys here, you have to understand how to create a VPC. So you can see in the process of creating our VPC, the first thing we did is we gave our VPC a name. So here it is tag. So in Terraform, this setting we picked in the management console, in Terraform, the argument is called tags. For most of the resource, you will be able to match the name of the setting to Terraform because it will be very similar. It might be different in some cases, but for the most part, you'll be able to tell that, okay, for this setting, this is what it is called in Terraform. So here, if you also come to the Terraform documentation, and these are in alphabetical order, you can see we have a section here for tags, and it just tells you a map of tags to assign to the resources. So the first option here is tags. That is why we have the tag argument in our Terraform code. And for the tag argument, since I'm naming this VPC test, for the value of my tag argument here, I can also do the same and call it test. Then the next option we picked here is our IPv4 CIDR block. If you look in our Terraform code, we also have an argument for CIDR block. Here, I enter 10.0.0.0.0/24. So for the value of my CIDR block, I can do the same here and enter 10.0.0.0/24.
But how do you determine the value to enter though? Like, how do you know that that's the 10.0, like you must enter that value?
Okay, for when you are creating your VPC, you don't really come up with this value yourself. For whatever VPC you are creating at your company will have a CIDR block range that they already use, and they will tell you which one to use.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But in some cases, they might say our CIDR block range is this. We want you to use something here. So for the CIDR block, don't worry about where you get it from. Typically, your company has their own CIDR block range, and they'll tell you what to use when you create their VPC. So here, we've covered this. The next one is IPv6. And here we are saying we don't want an IPv6. If it is something you don't want within your VPC, you don't have to add it as an argument in your Terraform code. So here, since we are saying we don't want to use IPv6 CIDR block, then we are not going to add that argument in our Terraform configuration. But let's say you want to add an IPv6. If you come to the Terraform documentation, you can see there's an argument for the IPv6. All you have to do is copy it and paste it as argument and enter the value. So since we are not adding an IPv6, that is why we don't have an argument for it. And finally, the last option we have in our Terraform configuration in the management console is tenancy. And here you can see what the argument is called in Terraform, instance tenancy. Here, for the options that are available to you, it is default and dedicated. That is why in Terraform, you can see that we put default. That's what I'm saying. You are not doing anything different from what you guys are already doing. You are not doing anything different from what you will be doing in the management console. You are taking what you are doing in the management console and filling in the values in Terraform. So if I create this VPC here, these are the settings that I have enabled in this VPC, and I will be able to do the same when I run Terraform apply to create this VPC, it would create another VPC that is called test with the same setting. So that is how you create a VPC. According to my notes, the next thing I need to do is enable DNS hostname. So how you do that is once you create your VPC, to enable DNS hostname, you select actions on the VPC and click edit settings. And if you scroll here, enable DNS hostname, you just check this box and click save. The next thing you have to ask yourself, how do I do that in Terraform? In Terraform, the option to enable DNS hostname, sorry, I'm reading the comment section. The arguments we are using here, like I said, is based on what you did, what you picked in the management console. The values, some of the values are going to be either true or false. Some of the value is name, a name that you make up yourself. And some of the value is between the values you have to pick, either AWS has, for example, for the instance tenancy, AWS only has two options. You can either pick default or dedicated. Since we want to use the default, that's why we pick default here. For values like tag, these are something you can make up. You can call it anything you want. Just like your CIDR block, you can use any CIDR block you want. So basically, I'm saying when you do Terraform, launch the service in the management console if you don't know how to do it in Terraform. Whatever settings you see, look for those arguments in Terraform, and that is how you find your Terraform arguments for the resource you are trying to create. In the beginning, when you work on this, it is very slow and you are strategically just going through it one resource after the other. When I worked on the Terraform project, it took me about a month to go through each resource the way I was showing you, from the management console to Terraform. Once you do it that first time and you get a good understanding of it, you get used to referencing the documentation, everything goes fast after that. So this part of looking in the management console and using that to learn what arguments you need in Terraform, you would only typically do that the first time you are deploying that service and if you are not used to that service. Exactly. So before you use Terraform, don't even try launching a resource in Terraform if you don't know how to create that resource in the management console. It is very important. You would only be hurting yourself. You jump straight to Terraform without knowing how to create those resources in the management console. First, you have to make sure you understand how to create them in the management console. So let's create another one. So here, according to my notes, I just enabled the DNS hostname in my VPC. To do that in Terraform, I believe they have added that option in the VPC resource. So here, you can see it says enable DNS hostnames. It is the same thing that I picked here. So if I want to enable DNS hostname in this VPC, all I'm just going to do is copy this argument, press enter here, paste it there, and I'm going to type equals to whatever the value is. So here, Terraform is telling you that by default. Another thing I want to mention is that for this argument, you can see Terraform has optional here, meaning that you don't have to use them within your code. Using them only depends on if you want to enable those settings or not. But there are some arguments here that Terraform will tell you that it is required. So if we scroll here, let's find one that Terraform will say is required. So for the VPC, Terraform don't have one, but for other resources you create, Terraform will tell you if an argument is required. If you see optional here, well, the CIDR block should be required. So for the ones you see here, if you see optional, so that is just telling you that you don't have to specify them as argument. And here for the enable DNS hostname in the VPC, it is telling you that it is a Boolean. A Boolean in programming means it is something that is true or false. So for the value of this enable DNS hostname, it can either be true or it can be false. So you can see here, they said if you don't add it, the default is going to be false. So since we want to add it here, all we have to do is type true. This is how you pick a resource and get the arguments for the resource. So let's create a subnet. To create a subnet in my VPC, I'm going to come here under subnet. I'm going to select create subnet. Then the first thing it is going to ask me is, what is the ID of the VPC I want to create the subnet in? I'm going to select this drop down and select the VPC that I want to create the subnet in. Then if you scroll down here, it will ask you to give the subnet a name. I'm going to call the subnet test subnet. Then here, it is going to ask you to pick an availability zone for the subnet. You can select this drop down, pick an availability zone. I'll pick US East 1A. Then here, it is asking you to enter a CIDR block for the subnet. For the CIDR block, I'm just going to pick this one. The CIDR block, again, is based on what your company wants you to use. Don't focus on how you get it. Your company will tell you which CIDR block to use. But here, we are just entering a CIDR block. And here, the last option is tags. If you want to create the same resource with Terraform, you come to your web browser in Google and type AWS Terraform create subnet. When you type it, usually it is always the first result. Select it. Then if you scroll down here, I always just come to basic usage. For the basic usage, I'm just going to copy this code and paste it here.
Can I ask you something? So, okay, so when you go back to the console, can you get the code from, if you went into the terminal, the CloudShield terminal, and look at the same, what the code is on there? I mean, would it be the same code if you already, because like me, you already started creating the subnet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you already create the subnet, you just need to copy the code. Can you do that as well? Like go to the CloudShield at the top and paste it into your chart. And that's another way you can do it too?
Yes, that's a good question. So in some cases, if you've already created the resources, but this goes a little bit deeper into, and as you learn Terraform, you will learn about Terraform state. In some cases, if you have already created the resources, so what she's asking is, if I've already created the resources, can I import the same resource that I've created into my Terraform code? Yes, you can do that. And for every resource you are trying to create, right? Remember I say you have to come to the documentation. You guys don't try to work as a cloud engineer and don't think you will ever reference documentation. It is impossible. You are always referencing documentation. So if you are someone that is lazy in doing research, you would have a hard time in this field. We are always referencing documentation, always. So for when we created the VPC, we referenced the documentation in Terraform to create a VPC. Now that we are creating a subnet, we're referencing the documentation to create a subnet. So let's say I've already created this subnet in my management console, and I don't want to write the code for it again, where I'm just trying to import this subnet into my Terraform configuration here. For every documentation for that particular resource, if you scroll all the way down, and how you can access the different sections within this documentation is this here. So here, there's a section called import. Under this import section, this is the code you have to run to import whatever subnet you have created that you want to bring into your Terraform code. You just have to run this. So here, it is saying that you have to run the command Terraform import. Then you specify AWS subnet. This AWS subnet is referring to your resource type. Then dot here, your reference name. This public subnet you see here is whatever you have called your reference name here. So let's say I was to import my subnet in. Since I am naming my reference name main here, it would be AWS _subnet dot main. Then the next thing you have to enter is the subnet ID. So let's say I already created this subnet in the management. Well, it won't accept this. So let me see what CIDR block range it would accept. So I'll do 10.0.0.0. So let's say I've created the subnet here, right? To what this import command is telling me to run in my terminal will be the name So what you would do is, well, this is like a much deeper topic, but I'm just going to show you briefly what this is telling you to do. So you copy this, paste it somewhere in like your notepad or something. It is telling you the command is Terraform import. Then you have to specify your resource type, which is always the name. This never changes. And your reference name. Since in my code, the reference name is whatever you call it. Since I call it main, I'll copy this and replace this public subnet part with main. Let me drag it out so you can see the entire code. Then the next part here is the ID of the subnet you are trying to import into Terraform. If I go into my management console, the subnet I just created, this is the ID of the subnet. So if you select it here, you can copy the ID of the subnet here and paste it here. So this is the command you will run to import this subnet into your Terraform code. But it is tedious to do that. I don't always recommend this as your first option because there is like a way to do it. Terraform don't just allow you to specify all your resource. To import a resource in first, Terraform wants you to create an empty resource block like this. In your empty resource block is where you will run this code. Then once you have run this code, then you have to start adding whatever arguments your actual subnet has in the code yourself. So it is kind of tedious to do it this way. But yes, if you already have a resource that you created, there is a way to import it into your Terraform code. Shola, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that does a lot. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, I think what I learned from this is, while you're while you're using the console, just write notes like you did, so that when you start building it in Terraform, the values that you really need.
Yes.
Because if you look at when you were creating it, the enable DNS was not listed in the basic. If you look at what you did in the documentation, but it's something you really need to do when you're building it in the console. So what I've learned from this is, have your notes. If you're going to build it for the first time, do it in the console, write the notes, write the important things you need to do, then go build it in Terraform.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
exactly.
Where I really had the problem was when I was, doing the Terraform modules, but this really helps. And if you can share your notes, that would be greatly appreciated.
Oh, sure. If I any of these notes that I have, if I would paste this in the chat. This is my notes that I used to create all the VPCs in the lecture. So
thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Hey, Aziz.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, excuse me. I got one question about S3. Basically, when we use Terraform to provide code, like to create S3 is standard, but we have different storage classes like standard. We have archive. We have infrequent access. So how we can provide this through the Terraform?
Okay. So here, if you want to use Terraform to create an S3 bucket, in Google, again, I will do Terraform into AWS, Terraform, create S3. This is the documentation I'll select it, and I will start with, this is creating an S3 bucket. I will copy this and paste it here. Then if you then under arguments reference. So if we look here.
Yeah, basically some of companies, they have like data, they don't use it. They want to archive to the infrequent access. How we can provide to the Terraform?
If they are asking you to archive, so they want to start at one point and archive it to something else. Yes. You have to use
console.
No, what in Terraform, what that is lifecycle rules.
Okay.
So lifecycle rules, this is the argument. But this configuration, right, this lifecycle configuration, there is more to it, right? So there is like, it is another resource where you have to specify your lifecycle rule, how you want to move it.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is what you have to use. Sometimes an argument might be another resource of its own that has other settings within it. Lifecycle rule is one of those. Since you want to specify like the different storage you want to move stuff to, so when you specify the lifecycle rule here, so you see here, it is telling you don't use the lifecycle rule because it is no longer available. Use the S3 bucket lifecycle configuration. And this is how you specify how you want to move your bucket within, move the objects within your bucket from the different tiers.
Thank you.
You're welcome. This too, if I have to build something like this, it is something I would have to carefully create the S3 bucket, stay what I picked, and just follow that same concept that I showed you. Whatever you did in the console, create a lifecycle rule for the bucket you are trying to create that for, and try to look for the same argument in the Terraform documentation. We are at the end of class. It's already 1. So if you guys want to sign out, please feel free to do so. And thank you. If you guys have any questions, you can always reach me in the Slack channel, and I'll try my best to get back to you as soon as possible. And thank you guys. Have a nice week. And for those that wants me to stay around to help them troubleshoot something, I would still be online to help you troubleshoot.
Yeah, I'm right here.
Okay, thank you. Have a good day.
Bye.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye, Assis.
All right, thank you. Bye.
All right. I don't know. You want to start with
Yeah, do I
Omar
switch
first?
on?
Or what